As election day nears and early voter ballot stations open across Chicago and the nation beyond. But young voters are still divided. Many energized, but many still staying home. What's keeping them from casting their ballots? I'll explore the factors behind the youth voter turnout and try and gauge why some aren't bothering to cast their ballot. A new Harvard poll released in early October surveying Americans aged 18 to 29 is shedding light on why some young voters are choosing to stay on the sidelines in this election. I spoke to political science professor at UIC, E.J. Fagan, for more insight as to why many young voters remain a bit disengaged.
There's about three factors that cause voter turnout to go up and down. So one is registration rates. So in the United States, you have to register to vote in order to vote. And if you haven't registered yet, well, then you can't vote. Young people have kind of two problems here. One is they're younger, so they haven't had as many chances to register to vote. And so that rate is lower. And two is that they move around a lot. And so you might have somebody who registered to vote in their previous jurisdiction, but they haven't registered to vote where they've moved to in the last few years. And the last is that, as we age, we feel more kind of communal attachment. We feel more responsibility for kind of what goes on in the world. A lot of young people haven't formed really strong political opinions yet. They haven't gotten to the point of really kind of getting into that habit of voting. And the last one is the habit, right? Voting is a habit. Once you vote once, you're more likely to vote again. End result is a rate of about 40% for younger voters and well above 80% for the oldest cohort of voters. When you're retired, you don't have a lot to do, and so voting is something that they tend to do quite a lot.
The poll showing that 53% of young male voters favour Harris, just 36% Trump, and with female that number is bigger, Harris with a 70% lead. There is a significant change in the enthusiasm between young Republicans and Democrats as well, with 60% of young Republicans saying they would definitely vote compared to 74% of young Democrats. I spoke with a number of Columbia students with the right to vote for the first time.
I don't mind people who don't want to vote. If you don't want to vote, then that's fine. But I feel like especially in this generation, it's important to have a voice and use that voice, especially with this election.
Do they believe in climate change? Do they not believe in climate change? Do they believe in the gun violence issue? Do they not believe in a gun violence issue? There's so many things that get me motivated because I know my one vote will count.
So I would definitely say that I became super motivated about voting when I realized that it wasn't just about presidents. I was like, I can vote for library board, police boards, and that really motivated me because I didn't know that my vote could matter that much in my environment or community.
But not everyone shares the same level of engagement.
Well, with the current state of our politics and the censorship in the U.S., I feel it's not really fair with the information we're getting. So I really honestly don't feel like that it's a fair playing field. So that's why I'm not voting.
There's a couple of issues that didn't pop in those surveys that you might expect. So, for example, the war in Gaza, this was about 4 or 5 months ago, was not a highly rated issue for young people. Climate change was also not a super highly rated issue. It wasn't low, but it was kind of right there in the middle. The one issue that popped that doesn't pop for other generations is gun violence. And I think that tells just what the number one cause of death is among young people, among teenagers in the United States. It's gun violence. And I think people kind of feel that, which is why that really, really pops.
While many young people are still hesitant to vote, key issues such as reproductive rights, gun violence, and the future of the economy are helping to draw some of those youths back into the political loop.
It's been common throughout American history for very young voters to be a little bit more democratic than normal. So voters under the age of 24 tend to be very democratic. That's mostly a selection effect. That's a certain type of voter votes before they're 24, and that tended to be a very liberal group. But by the time you enter your mid-20s, most generations are right around 50-50.
Columbia College also offers such events as Rev Up the Vote here today, which allows students to open their mind to their right to vote and what it means to them and where they stand in the political spectrum.
The whole idea of being an adult and being able to vote, it's very daunting.
Some obstacles, I feel like some people who have been in my life have faced as far as voting or feeling like the person that they voted for is actually doing their job. One of the things that I witnessed is that they get very upset.
I feel like if I was in Texas, I would still go and vote. But since I have to go through the mailing process, so I kind of just, I guess it's like a little bit of a cope. I guess it's like, oh, they'll be a red state anyways. So like there's certain states that have been historically red states, but like 4 years ago, like Georgia, they became a blue state out of nowhere. So you never know. But Texas is Texas, like.
Despite these frustrations, the poll shows a growing sense of urgency among younger voters, especially on issues like abortion, with 59% supporting a nationwide law to legalise abortion. Their voices could be a deciding factor in this election. Social media is also playing a big role in shaping perceptions, with memes about both candidates influencing young voters. Since a previous poll taken in the spring, Vice President Harris's approval rating as Vice President has actually gone up from 32% now to 44%. I mean, maybe it's got something to do with those memes. I think we're seeing a similar kind of thing with the memes and social media interaction kind of thing to try and gain more votes with the youngsters. Kamala, Donald Trump, and Nigel Farage in the UK from Reform UK. He appeared on a celebrity game show and then did some controversial cameo appearances. But whether that did anything or not, his party gained 3.43 million votes and now has a 14% share of the votes across the country, gained 5 seats in the House of Parliament. 74% of those in the poll agree to a cap on prescription drug prices. That's something we've had in the UK for as long as I can remember. So how do I digest this information? As a Brit, as an outsider looking in, I myself have just voted in my first election just a few months ago. A couple of things that have been a little bit foreign to me whilst researching into American politics is obviously the abortion and the prescription medication caps, as those are things that I've known for as long as I can remember in the UK, something we've had for a number of years essentially, and the fact that that's not a nationwide law already is a little bit crazy to me. Although the UK electoral system isn't technically a two-party system, there is more parties, but the last time that a non-Labour or Conservative Prime Minister was in office was back in 1912. But I do think that having more parties on the ballot that can potentially take over a constituency and have control over that area and have a voice in Parliament, such as in Bristol and Clacton-on-Sea, for example, Reform and Green Party respectively. Something E.J. Fagan mentioned is that there's a large portion of Liberal voters that vote before they're 24. Same kind of pattern is seen in the UK. 41% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted for Labour, and just 5% of those voted for the right-wing Conservatives. But only time will tell in what role that Gen Z could have to play in this upcoming election. Elliot Royce reporting for Chronicle TV.